when you were young. Okay. Okay, so you know how I like hand signals, right? Like what muscle is this? Yes, I do, Miss Carrillo. Anybody?
Pec major.
Pec major, thank you.
Pec minor.
Thank you. Actually, it should be this way. Deltoid, thank you. Thank you. I do 2 taps on my arm for biceps brachii because it's 2-headed, but there's also 2 muscles here, biceps brachii and brachialis, right? 3 taps back here, triceps, yeah? Remember the whole rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, quadratus lumborum, external obliques. You'll need this for a test. You'll need this internal obliques, right? That's how we figure out the whole turning thing. So I want you all to do this with me for the muscles we're going to learn today. Hold 4 fingers up like this, yeah? 4 fingers, very important. Put them underneath your chin like this and say Supra Hyoids. Supra Hyoids. Then literally flip your hand down like this and say Infra Hyoids. Supra Hyoids, Infra Hyoids. There are 8 hyoid muscles basically. I'll explain why I said basically here in a second. There are 4 that live above the hyoid bone and they basically live right here. There are 4 that live below the hyoid bone and they basically live right here. You do not want to memorize the names for all 8 hyoid bones. You're not going to be massaging them directly in a way. But so this really can serve you really well. Yes, Miss Hendrickson, talk to me.
I can't see your camera's off for me. I can't see your screen. It's all black.
Yeah? Can other people see me?
Yeah, it's working for us. She
It's
probably needs to reset.
I think you need to reset, Miss Hendrickson. Everybody else can see me.
So just reload the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, Miss Eplo says she can't see you either.
She can't? Oh, that's not good either. Okay, but other people
It's
can.
the internet.
Yeah, I can too, so. Oh, you can't hear me. Okay.
Oh.
Reset.
You might have to log off and log back on.
Yeah, log off
Okay,
and
I'll
log
try
back
that.
on. Hold on, I'm going to type that in here in case because Miss Avalos can't even hear me. Oh, jeez, come on. Okay. Let's give them just a second.
I can see you now.
Oh, good.
I can see you.
I can't smell either. Okay. Oh, my God. Oh, you know what? Like, I have to focus on talking to you guys when I'm talking to you. I'm not a multitasker, and I know that there's this whole world of side chat and jokes that go on that I miss out on that's much deeper and much more interesting also than anything I'm saying. And I just imagine, I can see your faces light up when I'm not saying anything, and I'm like, there's this whole other world I'm not privy to. Anyway, suprahyoids, infrahyoids. Supra, infra. How many suprahyoids are there? 4. How many infrahyoids are there? 4. Suprahyoids literally live here. Infrahyoids live here. Cool. I'm gonna show you pictures. We're gonna talk about them more, but I just want to kind of give you an overview, like I always do. They're named hyoid muscles because they attach to what bone? Miss Everson.
Wild guess here with the hyoid bone.
Yes. These are all muscles that attach to the hyoid bone, which is essentially a free-floating bone in here. It's a tiny little horseshoe-shaped bone. It's about that wide, just a little horseshoe shape, little like about the size of a 50-cent piece. these muscles attach you on the top and the bottom and help your tongue manipulate and you swallow and all sorts of things like that. They also help to depress your jaw because I need the most power to close my jaw, right? And the masseter does that, right? Masseter is powerful, but you need some power to lower your jaw, but you don't need a lot. So I've talked about this before, but just to kind of remind you, the crocodile hunter guy that I think is dead now, but he would hold the crocodile's mouths shut with his own bare hands because their muscles to open their mouths only have 5 pounds of strength. So you can hold them shut easy as long as they don't get free from you. But if they open, their ability to close is, 500 pounds of pressure or whatever. So you're the same way. You guys can bite really, really hard, but you can't open really, really hard because usually gravity just takes care of that for you. You're just like, duh. And your mouth drops open. So these muscles help to depress your jaw and then move your hyoid bone around and elevate your tongue and all that kind of stuff. So, because once again, you guys do amazing things with your mouth. You breathe through it, you eat with it, and you can talk with it. And most of you can do all three of those at the same time. Which we probably found out while pizza was there. You're probably talking to each other, yeah. And you did that all at once because of your hyoid. And the hyoid muscles. The 4 suprahyoids and the 4 infrahyoids. Yeah? Cool. Miss Clayton, yes.
Is the purpose of the hyoid bone, and you might have just said this, but is it just to hold those muscles in place?
No, the purpose of those muscles are to move the hyoid bone around, and they're all connected to that, your throat, and your tongue. And so the purpose of the hyoid bone is to actually help me kind of control breathing, swallowing, my tongue, all that kind of stuff. If you think about it, your tongue is really amazingly articulate. I mean, you think about the stuff you can do inside your mouth with your tongue. You can the side jokes I'm creating right here, yes. But yeah, you can do, Miss Averino just did a double dip on her tongue and twisted it and flipped it and everything, yeah. That takes incredible amounts of muscle and things like that. But you use your tongue, by the way, to manipulate food around your mouth too and to get it down the right windpipe and all that. I mean, not the windpipe, the esophagus and things like that. So anyway, these muscles are there to move the hyoid bone around, and that helps you control your tongue and your jaw and swallowing and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for asking that.
No.
I think I created a little bit of
Oh yeah.
crazy.
I don't think you have to try to create craziness in this group. Yeah. It was coming. The minute I said mouth and tongue, they're off. Yeah. Okay. So let me just check in with people to make sure they're listening. Mr. Overman. How many suprahyoids do I have?
We have 4.
Yes. How many infrahyoids do I have?
4.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Godot. How many suprahyoids do I have?
4.
And how many infrahyoids do I have?
4.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manzanares. How many suprahyoids do I have?
4.
And how many infrahyoids do I have?
4.
Cool. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody. So we've got that. And remember this for the rest of your life. And you're going to see how they're named really soon. And they're usually named by the other bone they attach to. So, because they're all attached to different bones inside your skull. So this is going to get kind of cool. And we're going to find, shockingly, that some attach to the temporal bone. What? Tapscott? More stuff going to the temporal bone? I'm starting to think this bone is really important. Yes, it is. That's right. And Mr. Craven, can you tell me the 5 features of the temporal bone?
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Right now?
Yes, Mr. Craven.
Of course. External auditory meatus, mastoid process, styloid process, zygomatic process, and your temporal mandibular joint.
Beautifully said. Thank you, sir. And thank you for telling me now. Ms. DeMose, Mr. Bose, can you tell me the 5 features of the temporal bone?
Yeah, hold on. Sorry, I
She's
was
eating.
eating.
I got you. She was using her Supra hyoids and Infra hyoids, by the way, to do that.
It's your external auditory meatus, your mastoid process, your zygomatic process, your styloid process, and it's TMJ. But hold on. I don't know how to pronounce it still.
Temporal.
Temporomandibular joint. Okay.
Bam! Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. Well done. That was actually really well done. Thank you. Okay, everybody. So let's look at some pictures of the hyoid muscles and let's talk about them. One of the hyoid muscles, by the way, I think is the most unusual muscle in the human body that I'm aware of. So buckle up, everybody. Let's see. Here we go. Doodle-doo-doo-doo. All right. Okay. So today, by the way, we're basically going to be looking at the front of the neck, the anterior part of the neck. So let's go there. We are going to be looking at, this is your hyoid bone right here. Yep. And these muscles coming down from the hyoid bone that are underneath it are your infrahyoids. There are muscles above it that are called your suprahyoids. And we're going to see them from a better picture, but we're going to be dealing with the front of the neck today a lot. We're also going to learn about 2 neck muscles that are actually found on the anterior spine, the anterior cervical vertebrae, as opposed to the posterior cervical vertebrae. Most of everything we've been dealing with is in the back of the body, right? When it comes to neck. We're going to be looking at stuff in front today. We'll be spending the whole day in front. Yeah. Okay. This is another really good picture. Here, this is your hyoid bone, believe it or not, right here. And these are muscles that attach to your hyoid bone. The one that makes up the bottom of your mouth is called the mylohyoid. It is a suprahyoid, but if you guys just poke underneath your jaw here, there's skin there, but you notice how it's kind of firm? There's something stretched across the bottom of your jaw. That's your mylohyoid. That's your mylohyoid. You're pushing on it. Some of you massage it when you rub the jaw underneath like that. You're rubbing the mylohyoid. And again, I'm not going to ask you to memorize these. They'll be on a test, but not on the test at the end of the year. I'm not going to be like, name the 8 hyoids. But I might say, how many suprahyoids are there and how many infrahyoids are there, right? And where do they live? And you'd be like, they live in the front of the neck, right here. But that's it. I wouldn't be, asking for specific names. Okay, and then we've got ones underneath that they've kind of cut away here, but they run down here. So let's break this down a little bit. Okay. I said you have 4 suprahyoids, but your book and every anatomy book would say I'm wrong. They'd say you have 3 suprahyoids and a digastric. And let me explain why. I still just call them 4 suprahyoids, and you'll see why in a second. It's much simpler, and it makes more sense to me. But what happens is this. Let me make sure my cursor's over here. Okay. Here's your little hyoid bone, right? And you've got this mylohyoid that goes from the hyoid bone to your jaw, right? But it actually hooks to the hyoid bone. Do you see this sling here? They call it a tendinous sling. It's actually a loop of tendon that the digastric goes through. Digastric means 2 bellies. There's a belly here, and there's a belly way in back. And the digastric goes through this sling. It actually goes through a sling that hooks to the hyoid bone, so the digastric never directly touches the hyoid bone, which is why it's not called a suprahyoid. But is it connected to the hyoid? Yes. It just goes through a loop. Instead of grabbing my hand, it grabs the loop. which to me is connected. I think it's ridiculous. I would call it a suprahyoid, and that's why I do call it a suprahyoid. But here's another picture of it down here. Let me make sure that you've got my thing. Okay. Here's the digastric. It goes through a sling. It actually helps support. It'll actually elevate the hyoid bone. And then it goes back here and attaches to a bump on the temporal bone. What's this large bump on the back of the temporal bone called? Miss Rader.
The mastoid process.
Oh my gosh. Are you telling me... Oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that. Are you telling me that there are... that there are... This bone actually attaches to the temporal bone? Yes. How many... Miss Rader, how many muscles do you now know that attach to the mastoid process of the temporal bone?
4.
Yeah, she's right. 4. What are they, ma'am?
The sternocleidomastoid, the splenius capitis, the longissimus, and the digastric.
Yeah. So there are now 4 bones. 4 bones. There are 4 muscles that attach to the mastoid process of the temporal bone. I've been kind of mentioning how many muscles attach to the mastoid process of the temporal bone for months now, huh? Almost like it's important to me. Could be a test question even. Probably not. Don't worry about it. Never mind. Anyway, I think it's important. It's a high stress area. Now, you won't ever directly touch the digastric because it's deep. It's deep to the sternocleidomastoid. It's deep to the splenius capitis. It's deep to the longissimus. It's way in here. But it does attach to that bone. Yeah. So, and it's not called a hyoid muscle because it doesn't actually attach to the hyoid. It goes from the jaw to your mastoid process. But we can see it supports the hyoid. And that's its purpose, by the way. It is connected via a tendinous loop to the hyoid bone. But that's why people make the distinction that you have 3 suprahyoids and a digastric. I would prefer we all just say we have 4 suprahyoids because it's the same thing. I want to point out something else to you. Many hyoid muscles are actual hyoid muscles are named by what they attach to. So you've got one called the stylohyoid. And it goes from the styloid process to the hyoid bone. So yet another muscle that attaches to the temporal bone. That little toothpick process that we've been learning about on your temporal bone behind your ear actually goes to your throat. Actually goes to this hyoid bone. And that's called the stylohyoid. It is a suprahyoid. Then you've got this tiny little geniohyoid that goes from the hyoid bone right back here. You can't feel any difference between this and the mylohyoid. It's very hard to distinguish them. But they're there. They make up the bottom of your jaw here. So all 4 of those together make up these suprahyoids. And I don't mean to confuse you. I just want to let you know why somebody would be like, no, Tapscott's wrong. There's only 3 suprahyoids. Yeah, but there's another muscle up there called the digastric that supports the hyoid bone, and it's up in the same place. So I would just say you got 4 suprahyoids. But if you want to be precise, you have 3 suprahyoids and a digastric. The digastric is a 2-bellied muscle. It's named that way because it has a belly here, a little tendon thing here that goes through this tendon loop, and a belly back here. And when it flexes, it actually lifts this thing up and actually elevates your hyoid bone. So does the stylohyoid muscle too. Okay. So, your book did consider these similar enough to put them all on the same page, which I would agree with. So you've got 3 suprahyoids. You've really got 4, but 3 suprahyoids technically. You've got the genlohyoid, the mylohyoid, and the stylohyoid. And you don't have to memorize those names. And you've got the digastric. And they all kind of live up, they all kind of go from the jaw back to the temporal bone and hook to the hyoid bone here. And they're all on top here, right? They all kind of go back in this area here. And most of their jobs really are to elevate the hyoid bone and depress the mandible. They can also help pull back your mandible a little bit, but their real job is to help open your mouth, elevate your hyoid bone, and they do different things at different times depending on how you need to manipulate food in your mouth usually. And this is a very good picture of them. You can't see them all here, but you can see 3 of them really here. And again, the mylohyoid makes up the bottom of your jaw. You can see the digastric here. You can see the stylohyoid. But basically, they make up the bottom of your jaw. And you can massage some of them. You can really massage the bottom of the jaw. And there has been some research done on the fact that the mere act of swallowing helps to reset muscle tension in your body. And so I used to have a PhD student here. She had a PhD, and she actually studied things like this. And she was a big believer that when you're like massaging somebody and loosening up their throat, then you have them go and swallow really hard because it kind of resets their muscles. So for those of you that are a little bit more adventurous, something for you to play with. Miss Abelos, talk to me.
I've actually heard that it resets your nervous system
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And the vagus nerve.
Yep.
So it kind of does more than when you swallow. So it
Yeah.
resets systems.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Nothing is isolated.
No.
In
And she was really into this. So yeah. And so is Miss Abelos. So now you got 2 people. You should check it out. Yeah. 2 authorities. Boom. Miss Savarino, talk to me.
So like my little brother told me that when you have the hiccups to like put your chin to your chest and swallow 3 times. I've done that and it actually works. Like, what's the reason for that?
I have no idea. I know something else that works too is, believe it or not, a spoonful of sugar actually really does work. There's something about the granules. They claim it could be sand. It doesn't matter, but nobody wants to eat sand. And I've tried the spoonful of sugar once and it worked immediately, but I can't handle taking a spoonful of sugar. Isn't that weird? And I don't know why. Yeah. They're still not exactly sure. I mean, they know hiccups are a muscle spasm, but they're still not sure like what's going on with them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My dog's drinking water.
Miss,
All right.
Mr. Craven, Miss Poppins never lies. A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. I love Mary Poppins. Oh my God. Miss Creo, yes ma'am.
Hi, I don't have anything profound, but mylohyoid is a breakdown. The word is mylo molar or mill, but I think it mainly means molar.
Yeah.
And the geniohyoid, genio in the word breakdown means chin.
Means what? Chin?
Chin.
Yeah. And that one really does go from your chin back here, but you can't see it in this picture because it's more superior than the mylohyoid. Yeah, cool. So they kind of mean, they mean like molar and chin or mouth kind of, they're mouth muscles. Yeah, I love it. Cool. Thank you. That might not have been profound, but it was very useful. And I didn't know it. Thank you. So those are your suprahyoids, everybody. You've got 4. Right? And if anybody ever questions you on that, you can be like, I know one's the digastric, and it's not really a suprahyoid, but it hooks via a sling through the hyoid bone. Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about infrahyoids. Infrahyoids, just like they sound, yep, go from the hyoid bone down to places, right? And you've got one that goes from the hyoid bone down to the sternum. So what do you suppose we call that? We call it the sternohyoid. Literally just named by the 2 locations it goes to, right? We've got one that goes from the hyoid bone to the thyroid cartilage, and so they call it the thyrohyoid. You don't have to memorize these. I'm just kind of explaining why you don't have. You've got one that goes from the thyroid cartilage down to the sternum, so they call that the sternothyroid. And you've got one called the omohyoid that goes from the hyoid bone here. Where do you suppose it attaches to? I think this is the most unusual muscle in the body. Where is the origin of the omohyoid? Miss Carrillo.
I know it says the thing there, but I was looking up the word breakdown just as
Please.
you were getting to it. As omo is derived from Greek omos, meaning shoulder,
Oh,
and
wow.
and that is in relation to where it's attached to in the scapula.
Yes. So you have a bone, you have a muscle. Thank you, by the way. That's super helpful. You have a muscle that is attached to your hyoid bone and goes way down here and attaches to your scapula, the superior borders of your scapula. Now, many of you are going to ask me, Mr. Tapscott, why does it do that? And I'm going to give you the answer that I've unfortunately given you on many things. I don't know. Nobody knows. There's a lot of mystery around this muscle. We can't figure out why the scapula that moves all over the place is attached to this thing. But again, it might also tie into shoulder tension and resetting shoulder tension and all sorts of stuff. We just don't know. It's a very unusual place to anchor a tiny infrahyoid muscle. That's, it's just very weird. And it's this two-bellied kind of thing. It's not called the digastric, but it is. It's a two-bellied little muscle. And it's just very, very unusual. And it's very weird because it's coming down from here and it's actually going back here to my scapula. Way down deep. Miss Hendrickson, please.
Does that like encapsulate the vagus nerve?
It doesn't encapsulate. It doesn't encapsulate it. No.
Oh, okay.
But they all
Is it-
could be tied together. The nerve they're talking about, everybody, is a nerve that kind of goes from your head down to your visceral region, down to your stomach. And a lot of people think, with good reason, by the way, that there's a tremendous amount of communication between your head and your stomach. You guys ever say, I've got a gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
And you literally do have a gut feeling. There's a lot of people that believe there's a lot of processing that goes on in your stomach, a lot of thinking,
Right.
especially emotional memory and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's an awful lot of cells down there that are nervous cells, actually. So it's not a crazy idea at all. Yeah. Miss Correa.
I think I just answered my own question, but I was going to ask if the omohyoid, I noticed it has two bellies and it has a tendon in the middle that kind of thins out. And I was going to ask if that's where the sternocleidomastoid is resting on top of it. And then I looked on the other page and it looks like it is.
Miss Creel?
Yes, sir.
I do not enjoy saying this because it's about the fourth time with you. And there will be a penalty to your grade. But I have now been a massage therapist for 27 years. I've been teaching this course at this school for 7 years, and I was teaching a couple of years before then. And that never, ever occurred to me, and I think you're 100% right. And I never understood why it was a two-bellied muscle. And it makes perfect sense. This would rub over here. You don't want it to rub over a belly of a muscle. They're too sensitive. And so that makes absolutely perfect sense. That is absolutely brilliant. See me after class.
Yeah, I'll just pack up my stuff. Yeah. I know, and take that.
I never thought about that. I've always wondered why it was a two-bellied muscle, and I was just like, oh, well, who knows? Go on. Yeah. So, yeah, brilliant. Anyway, we can see all the, so embarrassing. Guys, this is embarrassing class to teach. So very, very humbling. So you can see all the infrahyoids down here. So we still got 4 supras, 4 infras. Okay, I want to talk to you guys about 2 other muscles. And I'll show you pictures in just a second, but I want to talk to you about where they are. These are muscles that are anterior cervical vertebrae muscles. So this is, my esophagus and trachea right here, right? I can move it back and forth. You can do it too. It'll click around a little bit. You'll hear it pop. Yeah, exactly. Miss Hendrickson did the perfect thing. It kind of, yeah. Anyway, these muscles are behind here. You could actually pull this over. Do you see what's happening in my neck right now? Looks like I have a goiter. And I could actually push back in here and actually rub these. They are accessible. I don't usually access them on clients because they think I'm choking them out and they're not really happy with me. But I have done it before where I thought there was tension in there. I just want to point out where they are. These muscles, and if they were on a test, he paused for dramatic emphasis. And the test wouldn't ask for the origin insertions on these two muscles. They're just too nitpicky. But it'd be like, where are they located? And one of the choices would be on the anterior cervical region behind the esophagus and trachea. Because we just want you to realize they're back in here. Mr. Richards.
So we can massage them. I thought that this was a danger zone.
Well, it is a danger zone. Like, I don't use my elbow in this area. Or my fist. But it's kind of like the axillary region and the popliteal region. Those are danger areas, right? But many of you now go hardcore on the borders of these areas because you're now intelligent enough with your anatomy to know we mean don't poke in the center. This same thing with the throat. You can pull the throat side slightly and rub in here gently, and it's quite fine, completely safe. We just don't, in the beginning, we're like, don't touch people's eyes, don't touch their throats, don't touch their armpits, you know what I mean? So it's just, yeah, but as an advanced massage therapist, absolutely, you sure can. Good times. Yeah, it's fun. And we slowly kind of work this over, and I don't try to get this thing all the way over, and I just try to find the front of the transverse processes is what I'm shooting for, and you'll see why here in a second. Miss Carrillo.
It kind of reminds me how, like, in the psoas major, even though it could be like very nice to massage, it will take time. Like, I would think you would try to hit everything around it to try to correct it itself.
Yep.
And maybe stretch it itself. But unless this person, like, specifically is like, look, I need this work done, I figured you don't really need to hit it as much.
And without
especially, like...
Agreed. And I'm so glad you actually mentioned iliopsoas, because if these muscles kind of run right here on my transverse processes, but in front, if they're kind of in front here, what action do they do when they work bilaterally? Without even looking in the book. Thank you for those. These are prayer muscles too, right? They pull your head down. And what action do you suppose they do if you do unilaterally? So they can be stretched by doing extensions. And I know massage therapists that actually bring their clients back and have their head gently drape off the edge of the table. But even if you don't do that, when you're just rolling their neck back, you are extending their head. And when you guys do side flexions and stuff, so they can be stretched. That's where I was heading with that. So kind of like the iliopsoas, you might want to just do side flexions and extensions to stretch these out. They are important to stretch because what do most of us do most of the day? Right? I'm usually in a flexion. These muscles do get shortened. But all you got to do is just be like, get them back here, roll them over here, roll them over there. Yep. And when I do work these muscles, I work them when they're in a stretch because I don't want to dig in there hard. So I get them back like this and then start to work in there and try to open it up, right? Because I don't want to have to rub hard. I want them to get a lot out of what I'm doing. So anyway, I agree with all that. And do be very careful. And if you do this type of work on somebody, just like the iliopsoas, I'm in constant communication with them. Whereas when I'm rubbing your back, I've already got more or less pressure. I kind of figure out what you like, then I stick there. And then if you don't jump, I don't really ask much. But here, I'm like, I need you to talk to me. And I always tell clients, just lift a finger up if something's bothering you. And they can literally lay there and be like, it works really well. So that they know that that's their safety word, right? Lift that finger. They don't have to talk, anything, okay? All right, so this is the longus capitis and the longus coli. I'm going to show them to you. You will not need to memorize origins and insertions, but you do need to know where they are. They are behind my throat, my windpipe, and they are in front of my spine. You can't get to them from the back. They are on the front of your cervical vertebrae. They're in front here, but behind my throat, right? You would have to access them from the front. They are sandwiched between your cervical vertebrae and your windpipe and your esophagus, right? Your trachea and your esophagus. They're between those two things, right? Okay. Let me show you a little picture here. Boom, boom. So, it's coming. The longus capitis, we've got other muscles that are called capitis, right? It attaches to your cap, to your skull. It actually inserts into it says the inferior surface of your occiput, but guess what that means? That's fancy words for the bottom of your skull. It inserts underneath my head here. And it has attachments of the transverse process of not all of your cervical vertebrae, but down to C6. So it attaches your transverse processes in front, this is all in front. We're looking at the front of a body. We've removed the neck here. We've removed the neck, the throat here, and these muscles are in front. We are looking at the front of somebody right now, and they are hooked to the bottom of the skull, and the transverse processes down to C6 here. It can help with lateral flexion and rotation and flexion, right? Because they're in front. And you can see how you could rub these. The throat's kind of here, and you can actually kind of get into rub these. Yes, Mr. Jones?
I'm just wondering, can they be antagonists to the like longissimus and spinalis? Can that happen?
You tell me.
I would say yes.
Yeah, if it can happen, it does happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not with everybody, but yeah. Anything that does the opposite action of another muscle can be an antagonist to it. And do I think that probably occurs? Sure. Yeah. Could tension, by the way, could these muscles shorten because we all have our heads down in our phones or whatever,
Yes.
our laptops, these muscles shorten, and then the back neck muscles, the posterior neck muscles try to work extra hard to pull them back this way, and that causes neck tension. Sure. All that's quite possible. So this is a very good reason to put your client's neck gently and slowly. Remember, massage is 100% safe if you do it slowly and do an extension. Because stretching these out could really help with tension in the backside, which is weird because you feel tension in the back, you want to bend your head down, but you also want them to go the other way. But yes, Mr. Jones, thank you. Yes, these can be argumentative muscles with things like splenius capitis, splenius cervicis, semispinalis capitis, the suboccipitals, the longissimus, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. So this is longus capitis, and then there's something called longus coli, which essentially does the same thing. It goes all the way down to T3, by the way. So it goes even past the cervical a little bit. Again, this is in front. This is deep. It essentially hooks transverse processes to the bodies of your vertebrae, kind of like the multifidi or rotatories. This is kind of a rotatories or multifidi for the front. And only in the cervical region. I know it goes down to T3. That's three thoracic vertebrae down. But still, this is kind of like multifidi or rotatories in the front. And that's the longus coli. And all you ever need to know about the longus coli and the longus capitis is these are front anterior neck muscles found behind the trachea and the esophagus. That's what's important to know about them. You don't have to memorize every last little origin insertion. You're not going to be digging here finding this stuff, right? You're going to be stretching it and maybe rubbing the transverse processes in front. That's longus capitis and longus coli. So if I were to ask Mr. Richards, what are the two main muscles that I find? He's like, why always me? What, Mr. Richards? By the way, I listen to this radio show on the way to work in the morning, and they have a game on there called Beat the Brit. They've got a British guy on there, and they play this game called Beat the Brit, and they ask him things like, what does paint the town red mean? And things that aren't common, and he comes up with the greatest stuff. Anyway, let's beat the Brit. What are the two muscles found posterior to my trachea and esophagus, but anterior to my cervical vertebrae?
So they are. That's not the longus capitis and longus coli.
Yeah, longus capitis and longus coli. That's what I wanted. They are sandwiched between those two. Yeah.
So that in a test, that's how they describe it.
Yes. Because it's anterior to the cervical vertebrae, right? It's in front of my cervical vertebrae, but it's posterior, it's behind my esophagus and trachea, behind my windpipe and my food pipe. It's just a fancy way of saying they're sandwiched between those two things. Yeah. Yes, thank you. We did not beat the Brit. No, we didn't. Yeah. Miss Stevens, what are the two muscles that are found that are anterior to my cervical vertebrae but posterior to my trachea and esophagus? Ms. Stevens?
Can you say the first part one more time?
I can. What are the two muscles that are found sandwiched between my trachea and esophagus and my cervical vertebrae? So they're found in front, but behind my throat. So they're found anterior to my cervical vertebrae, posterior to my esophagus and trachea.
The longest capitis and the longest coli.
Beautiful. That was perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So that's the longest capitis, longest coli. So we learned about 4 suprahyoids. We learned about 4 infrahyoids, right? We learned about the longest capitis and longest coli. And I actually do this because that's kind of where they are, right? Longest capitis, longest coli, suprahyoids, infrahyoids. Longest capitis, longest coli, suprahyoids, infrahyoids. Yeah, boom. Yep, cool. Okay, this is a good place to take a break before we come back to talk about, because we know them all now, all the muscles that attach to the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae. And when I come back, I know, it makes my head hurt too. When I come back, I might ask you guys, what are all the muscles that attach to the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae? This is actually an incredibly difficult question. Yep. And Mr. Richards is off the hook because I just called on him, right? So it's going to be somebody else. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, guys, take a break. We'll be back at 9:42. 9:42. Thank you. Yes, sir. 9:42. Right,
He caught me off guard. Temporal mandibular joint.
Yes, temporal mandibular joint.
The external auditory meatus.
Beautiful.
The zygomatic process, the styloid process, and the mastoid process.
Nice job. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Ma, what are the 5...
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm eating too.
What are the 5 features of the temporal bone, sir?
Okay. So just 1 second. So it's a external auditory meatus, mastoid process, styloid process, temporal mandibular joint, and zygomatic
process. Good. I'll take it. No, thank you, sir. Good job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Snell, what are the 4 muscles that attach to the mastoid process? 4 muscles.
The longissimus.
Longissimus, coming up from the back, yeah.
Okay. The splenius capitis.
Splenius capitis, beautiful. Also in the back, yeah.
The digastric.
Digastric, one of the suprahyoids, yes.
And the sternocleidomastoid.
And the prayer muscle, sternocleidomastoid. Really well done. Thank you, sir. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Miss Dang?
Yes.
Miss Dang, you might need help saying some of these. That's okay. But what are the 4 muscles that attach to my mastoid process?
Okay. Longissimus.
Longissimus.
Yes. Splenius capitis.
Splenius capitis.
Splenius capitis. Sternomastic.
Sternocleidomastoid.
Sternocleidomastoid.
Yeah, let's do it one more time. Sorry, can we do it one more time together?
Yes.
Sterno. Cleido. Mastoid. Beautiful.
Sternocleidomastoid.
Beautiful, I love it.
And another one, I didn't know how to say.
Gastric.
digastric.
Beautiful. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Well
sir.
done. I loved it. Cool. Hey, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir.
Same question, sir. What are the 4 muscles that go to the mastoid process here?
I cannot.
Let's do them together.
Okay.
All right. The one in back, longissimus.
Pardon?
Longissimus.
Longissimus.
Yep. Splenius capitis.
Splenius capitis.
Yes. I love how he says it with conviction. Sternocleidomastoid.
Sternocleidomastoid.
Yeah. Sterno.
Sterno.
Cleido.
Cleido.
Mastoid.
Mastoid.
Good. Last one. Digastric.
Digastric.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Miss Lee.
Good morning.
Same question, Miss Lee. What are the 4 muscles that go here to the mastoid process? And I'm happy to say them with you.
Longissimus.
Longissimus, yes.
Sterno, how does it?
Sterno, Cleido, Cleido,
Sterno,
Sterno,
and
Cleido,
Kaleido,
mastoid.
mastoid.
Good. So longissimus, sternocleidomastoid.
And sterno, oh yes, and
Digastric.
digastric.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
digastric.
and then one last one, splenius
Splenius
capitis.
happiness.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. That was really good.
Thank
I'm very
you.
happy. Okay, everybody. Moving right along. Have you guys been thinking about the muscles that attach to the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Well, we can't call on you now, Mr. Richards. I promised not to call on you. Do you really want to take a stab at it, sir? Go for it.
I've got a few.
Yeah.
So you've got the longus capitis, longus coli.
Good. Good.
Galens.
Good.
You've got the longissimus, iliocostellus, splenius capitis, and splenius civil.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's not it, but that's really, really, really good.
Is there any other? What do you know the others?
Yeah, I do. Let's see. Miss Rader, what did he miss?
The multifidus and rotatories.
Oh, the multifidus and rotatories. Yes, good one.
Mm-hmm. The oblique capitis superior and inferior.
Oh, yes. So there are 2 suboccipitals, far and away, that attach to that too. Really good.
And the intertransversari.
Oh, yeah. We don't even talk about these muscles because they're so deep, but she is dead on right. The intertransversari are actually called intertransversari because they are between the transverse processes of your cervical vertebrae and your lumbar vertebrae. But so dead on right, yeah.
I think Mr. Richards said it, but I'm not sure. Does splenius cervicis?
I think he did say splenius cervicis, yeah.
Okay.
I think, and he might have said this, but there's one more that I think is very obvious that I don't think anybody's said yet. Miss Carrillo. Are you done?
I was trying to make a list and I didn't get to hear everything, but I put down longissimus, splenius capitis, sternocleidomastoid.
Does the splenius capitis go there?
No. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna skip.
Okay, skip. No, skip. Good. Miss Abelos. Talk to me.
Okay, I said the longus capitis, longus coli, rectus capitis anterior, your scalenes, your SCMs, your rector spinalis, transversus spinalis, oblique capitis superior, and then the posterior of both the rectus capitis and the. Gosh, this is complicated. I'm really sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I don't know that I can actually do this off the top of my head either. I just want to get a discussion going. I'm going to do a slide presentation
but
on this.
I think the splenius capitis is included in that, and the splenius cervicis is in that as well.
Well, the splenius cervicis for sure, right? Because it goes to the cervical stuff. Also the semispinalis capitis, right?
Right, and then it creates that. I'm including the entire splenius bandage in that. So I believe that it is the capitis is involved with that. So I'm holding firm on that one.
I love it. I love that you called it the bandage. Mr. Singletary, do you have something to add to this? You have your hand up.
I do not. I was going to say the same, my splenius capitis, but that's okay. You already said it.
Mr. Craven, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I was going to say ditto to everybody else, and if it hasn't already been said yet, trapezius. No, not like the upper fibers of the traps.
I don't think so. I think they go to the spinous processes.
Oh,
so they go the stuff sticking out the back, but not to the sides. But sir, by the way, to your credit, they are in the same location. You are right. I mean, yeah. You didn't name a leg muscle, so you're doing good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Rader.
The levator scapula.
Yeah, I was shocked nobody said that. I think nobody said levator scapula, which I thought would be the low-hanging fruit. You guys picked really difficult stuff to find, like the two occipitals, suboccipitals back here, and all sorts of crazy, and the inner transverse. Sorry, Miss Rader. Woo. Anyway, let's do a little slide presentation on this. You all did fantastic. I honestly don't think I could have answered that correctly off the top of my head. What am I trying to make a big point of? I'm trying to make a big point that there's a lot of really important things that attach to the sides of the neck. And once again, the neck's really important, right? I'm always trying to inspire you to work on certain areas of the body very thoroughly, right? So, I think the feet should be worked on. I think everything should be, but the feet should be worked on very thoroughly. I think the whole sacral hip area should be worked on very thoroughly, right? I think this whole back of the head and neck should be worked on very thoroughly, right? These are places that just lots of stuff is tied in and lots of nerves are coming out of. Okay, let me share this little slide presentation because it'll really quickly kind of go over this stuff. It's kind of cool. I think we got them all between, I think 14 of us make a whole student somehow. I'm including myself in that group, by the way. It was not an insult. Or if it was an insult to me too. Okay. Muscles that attach to the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae. Does not look like my slide presentation at all. Yeah. I love this. I pulled this up. I'm sorry, by the way. I thought I could use this, so I hope it's okay. I'm using Miss Rader's slide presentation because, and again, this is a very humbling day for me because it's better than the one I had. So, if you haven't figured out, she is a phenomenal student and she put a lot of time into this and she's 100% correct. So, the levator scapula. Yep, and these are great pictures. Her pictures were so much better than my stuff. Remember, the levator scapula comes up from remember it's on the medial border. This is the medial border of the scapula. It's above the rhomboids, but it likes to hook up to the side of the neck. Transverse processes of C1 through C4. Well done. The longissimus goes all the way from your back, but it runs up the back and actually hooks into the sides of the neck as it's going up to the back of the head. I've been emphasizing it goes up to the mastoid process, which it does, but it grabs onto transverse processes along the way. So it can actually help flex your neck back and forth. So you've got a really strong connection between your head and your butt, right? The iliocostalis, I think this one's kind of amazing. We actually learned at the beginning, but then we kind of forget about it. This is your most lateral erector spinae muscle, right? You got your spinalis, you got your longissimus, you got your iliocostalis. This guy swings way out wide, grabs onto ribs, but he does come back in and grabs onto the transverse processes of your lower cervical vertebrae. Again, your neck and head are hooked to your butt. Yeah. Multifidi and rotatories, the shoelaces of the back. those are all about spinous processes and transverse processes all the way, right? You got the semispinalis capitis. It likes to grab on to transverse processes on the way up here as it heads up to the head. Boom. Love it. Splenius cervicis. This is the one that goes from the spine to the cervical region. That's why it's called spine cervical, splenius cervicis. And excellent choice right in here. Boom. It's a beautiful slide presentation. And then the oblique capitis superior to oblique capitis inferior. Here's the superior going down and hooking to a transverse process. Here's the inferior hooking to a transverse process and the spinous process of C2. Boom. Excellent. So nicely done. The inner transverse, sorry. These are teeny tiny muscles that you'll basically never feel. They are between the transverse processes. You find them basically in the lumbar region and the cervical region. We believe that they're actually not really up in the rib region, the thoracic region, because your ribs provide support there. But they are deep, deep inside, actually connecting one transverse process to the next, all the way up here. And they're only found really in the neck and the lumbar region. The scalenes, right? What two scalenes does the brachial plexus come out between? The brachial plexus gets formed out of the neck. Miss Everson. Middle and what? Anterior, yes. Middle and anterior. Through this gap right here. Oh, jeez, stop. Through this gap right here, right there. And it comes out of several vertebrae. And they kind of come together and rope together and make the brachial plexus come out of there. Super important. And they attach to ribs too. I love it. And then longus capitis and longus coli that we just learned live in front of your body. Yes, they're behind your throat, but they are in front of your neck. Thank you. That's all, folks. Yeah.
Great job, Miss Rader.
That was really a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was working on tying these together and then I forgot that I had this thing in there. And I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. So thank you. Okay. So part of that though was to really remind you of how important all those things are that attach to the transverse process of the neck and how important the neck is and how the neck is ties into every other part of the body. And so remember, you guys are learning about what I call high value targets, right? In the military, a high value target is a place that has lots of supplies, right, that you want to get from the enemy or whatever. And I hate to use that example right now when we're at war, basically, but the high value targets are places where you find lots of muscles on the body. The transverse processes of the cervical region is a high value target. I didn't count how many muscles that was, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, a lot, right? Muscles that attach up here. We also learned that the axillary region, especially the posterior border, has like 6 or 7 muscles right in here, right? There's quite a few important muscles, 3, 4, right here in the anterior axillary region, right? These are very important, and the sacral region. And the sacral region's got spinal erectors coming off it. It's got abdominal muscles going into it. It's got gluteal muscles coming off of it. It's got your sciatic nerve coming out of it. It's got deep 6 deep down in there. Like that whole area is just rich. And feet. Feet have so much stuff. Feet give you a sense of whether you're standing properly and all this stuff. All sorts of tiny muscles in there, all sorts of long muscles in there, all running up your leg. All the fascial lines come tying down to there. All this stuff becomes really, really critical. And don't get me wrong, I think legs are very important. I actually think, unfortunately, structurally speaking, your arms are the least important. You don't walk on them. I can have a broken arm and actually still have good posture. You can't have a broken leg and have good posture. You can't have a broken back, broken neck, broken anything and have good posture, but your arms actually are secondary. Anyway, things to think about because you only have an hour or you only have 2 hours. I don't think 2 hours is enough time to address a human body the way I want to. Right? So I have to make really hard choices. We made hard choices in this class. Is there more stuff to teach you guys? Sure. but we have to make choices. So we focused on anatomy, on muscular anatomy mainly. Miss Clayton, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, when did Miss Radar do that? Was that like a break, or I'm confused?
I called her this morning at about 3:30 in the morning is when she gets up, and I said, "Hey, I need some help this morning. I didn't get my homework done last night." And she says, "I got you, Tapscott." And yeah, she whipped that on over me. Yeah.
Nice.
She'll have to answer that. It was actually a while ago, and I actually forgot that I saved it because I was so happy about it. And then I started kind of working on one, and then I was like, "Oh my God, I've got this!" And I was so thrilled. And I looked through, I'm like, "This is so well done." Yeah. But it was a while ago. It was a while ago. I mean, quite a while ago. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's kind of cool like that. Yeah. That's her secret identity. Her wearing her scrubs. She changes out of them into like a little cape and stuff. You just don't know. Miss Creel.
Yes, Miss Rader's awesome. I wanted to ask about, there is a muscle that goes to the C7, and it was the serratus posterior superior. I didn't know if we wanted to include that too. It seemed like a very popular muscle that we would always hit because of the wrong.
What is it?
The serratus posterior superior. It's on the spinous process of C7 to T3. I know it's at the end, but it does touch it.
Yeah, but it's spinous process, right? Not transverse process.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. By the way, don't get me wrong, my dear. We're making, it's kind of like Mr. Craven. We're making some arbitrary distinctions. I mean, Miss Ablos really kind of framed this correctly. There is a whole band of fascia back there that all this stuff weaves into. So at some point, once you're in that area, you're stuck to something that's stuck to that. So you're not crazy off. But yeah, but it doesn't technically go in there. Yeah. Miss Green, talk to me.
Hi.
Hi.
So I just wanted to clarify because a lot just happened, and I was writing them down as you guys were talking.
Oh, awesome!
You guys are so great. I just wanted to make sure. Is there 13 of them?
Let me let's see. Hold on.
Sorry, I was like kind of just writing them as people were just saying.
My dear, don't ever be sorry for asking to learn. That's probably something I should have. Let's see. 1. Hold on. 2, 3, 4, 5, if you count multifidian rotatories. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, 13, depending on how you name them. But 13, it sounds like you got every last one.
And
that's assuming you're not counting the scalenes as 3 separate muscles, Anyway, but yeah. And I don't think you are.
Yeah, no, I think I have them all. Can I read them to you?
Can I read these to you instead?
Yeah.
Right. So what we have, and by we I really mean Miss Rader. What Miss Rader has is the levator scapula. And that one's huge, right, everybody? Because it connects the shoulder to the neck, and we see a lot of neck tension with the levator scapula. It's a tiny little muscle that gets very annoying for people. Levator scapula. Then we got the longissimus, one of the 3 spinal erector muscles. Then we've got the iliocostalis, another one of the 3 spinal erector muscles. Then we've got the multifidi and the rotatores, shoelaces of the back. Then we've got the semispinalis capitis, which is, remember, the 2 of those make the speed bumps of your neck. They're the reason we see that kind of bump over people's necks. Then we've got the splenius cervicis. It's kind of a muscle that goes kind of from your spine and back up into the side of your neck. Splenius cervicis. Then you've got 4 on each side, 4 suboccipitals. 2 of them on each side are attached to transverse process of C1. And that's oblique capitis superior and inferior. So oblique capitis superior, oblique capitis inferior. Then you've got these weird little muscles that are actually behind, like when this guy is like, all your little vertebrae here, there's another vertebrae underneath, and these muscles just attach between the transverse processes. They are called the between the transverse processes muscles, the intertransversari. And they're not sorry, that's plural. There's lots of them. Intertransversari. The scalenes, Got an anterior, middle, and posterior scalenes. Brachial plexus comes out here. And two muscles here in front, longus capitis and longus coli. Longus capitis and longus coli. And that's it. That should be all of them. And thank you for taking notes. And thank you for asking questions.
Thank you, I got it all.
I think you had it before. That's awesome. Okay, very, very cool. Thank you, Miss Rader. I've released your guys' homework for tonight. It is just one assignment. And I think that you will have time to finish it during class if you so choose. And then that's it. Then I'll come back in and check on you here in just a little bit. Depending on how fast that goes, we might do a little bit of review as well.